Officials at the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development, inclusive of the Department of Gender and Family Affairs, meeting with several women's groups today as discussions continue on the Protection Against Violence Act 2023. Carla Palmer reports on the ministry's closed-door session.
After some 2 hours, the women's organizations emerged from the meeting hopeful and optimistic that their recommendations of more stringent laws to further protect persons against abuse were well received. Vice President of Women United, Lisa Boswick-Dean, outlined several concerns going in.
There are also portions of the Act which relate to what aid is available to a victim of violence, but they limited it only to victims of sexual violence. And we're saying that the aid that is available should not just be available to victims of sexual violence, but to as the new act intends, to the victims of all violence. And particularly some of the aid as it relates to domestic violence definitely should not be excluded from that section.
The meeting comes 12 days after the Protection Against Violence bill passed through the upper chamber of Parliament on August 2nd of this year. Some women's groups at the time raised concerns the bill was not all-inclusive and did not go far enough in its protection of everyone, with emphasis on gender rights. President of the Bahamas Union of Teachers, Belinda Wilson, feels its passage was premature and the government put the cart before the horse as discussions with relevant stakeholders were still ongoing.
We should have had the discussions. We should have had working sessions. We should have had the draft in front of us for us to peruse and amend prior to the passing of this bill. So we expect that on October the 4th, that this will be high on the agenda, and our voices as women in this country and women leaders will be heard.
Founder of Rise Bahamas, Tennille Burrows, says the laws protecting children and women are just simply too lenient on perpetrators.
A crime of rape would have a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. I've never once seen someone go to jail for raping a child and get a life prison sentence. So we want to say, if you're not going to give a life sentence for raping a child, you need to have at least a sentence in place, something like 20 years or something like that. That's sufficient. Once perpetrators are charged and jailed, we need to ensure that they have access to proper rehabilitation programs, because we see that there are a lot of repeat offenders.
Once the recommendations are reviewed and agreed by Cabinet, Minister of Social Services and Urban Development, the Honourable Obi Wilchcombe, says they will be tabled to become a part of the amended Protection of Violence Bill at the new sitting of Parliament.
Further today than we were a year ago, or further today than we were 4 months ago. Where we're trying to go is to get to legislation that helps us dealing with an issue that we have seen to be taboo. We talked about it for many years, did nothing about it, but now we're doing something about it. So even if mistakes are made in the process, it doesn't matter. What does matter is knowing where we're going and getting to that objective.
Many of these women representatives say they will continue to agitate for justice and a change wherever necessary until their required objectives are met. For the Bahamas Tonight, I'm Carla Palmer.